What was the most attractive aspect of Craig to sign him?
Well, Steve, I think 5-on-5 scoring, 5 out of the last 7 years, he's top 20 goals. Everybody advertised him as an absolute true professional. He's a true right winger, volume shooter. Probably plays best in the second and third line role, can certainly play the bumper in the power play. And we described the fact that Bergey's in that spot, so he's probably not likely taking it, but I'm more than happy to move around and be a shooter on the second one if necessary, or he can slide down low in the drop off. But we've felt all along that the depth in scoring has to be there. It showed up this year in the playoffs. It was a real factor for us the previous year, and Craig touched an awful lot of the boxes that we were looking to plug that hole with.
And just a follow up, do you feel now that you're a better team than you were earlier this week, or do you still have to be aggressive in the trade and/or free agent market?
Oh, we're certainly exploring all the avenues of both free agency and through trade. I'm not going to tell you that I've got something on the burner here. I do believe that we addressed an area that we had a need in. We've allowed for internal competition to continue to bubble up, and we have several young players in that mindset, and that's healthy for our group overall. And clearly, we had long discussions internally about where is our power play going to be at the end of the day. Krejci was on it in the playoffs, did a nice job. Marsh went down low. Obviously, we've got a vacancy up top that we have to, at the current state, fill from within, and that might be an audition thing. We certainly feel comfortable with Grizz or Charlie, and if other players, Jacob Zaboral, establishes himself, somebody is going to get an opportunity there, or we're going to continue to explore from outside if the opportunity presents itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We'll go next to Connor Ryan. Go ahead, Connor.
Hey, Don. I know Smith's baseline numbers as a 20-goal scorer stands out, but he's also a favorite of the analytics community in terms of his shot volume, 5-on-5 production. When it comes to targeting free agents that best fit the club, how much does your analytics staff somewhat play into a few of these decisions?
Well, there's certainly a layer and a variable that we look at. I mean, we have different lenses. Obviously, we have pro scouts that do an awful lot of work and travel to attend these games and follow up with video, follow up with having knowledge of the players and trying to do their best job as possible to know how that player is going to fit in our lineup, having a coaching meetings, as to where they're going to use that player. And obviously talking to the player himself, spending a lot of time yesterday with Craig and his representatives and allowing him to ask any questions that he feels most comfortable to make the best decision. It's a two-way street in that regard. You're trying to recruit a player, obviously identifying him first and foremost so you can come in and help your team. And the analytic piece has become a tool for all of us to use, and certainly, we try to add it to all of our decision making.
Thanks.
Thank you, Connor. We'll go next to Matt Porter. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Don. Two questions. One, are you in the market? Are you in the business for Alex Pietrangelo and Taylor Hall? That level of player.
Well, we're comfortable having conversations with the remaining free agents that we feel would help our club. I have not, in full disclosure in this case, I have not had a discussion with Pietrangelo's camp. We feel that our right side, it might not be the absolute best fit for Hockey Club. Very respectful of the players, an elite player in the National Hockey League. But that's not the discussion we've had. As regards to other players, we're certainly gauging the interest on both sides of it and seeing what we could potentially fit in.
Do you feel like with Pietrangelo, is he still setting that market as far as defense and what you might be able to add on the back end if that's the route you explore rather than an audition process?
Well, I don't think any one player is going to set a market. He has his own as a player. He is. You're seeing several other players, throughout the league during the course of yesterday and what will trickle in over the last week and the coming weeks if it takes that long. There's never any one comparable that anybody points to. It's an entire broad-based market, and every player finds their slotting with particular teams.
Yeah, I guess in the sense of just saying that in the sense of a team, interested in a player at that number that we expect Pietrangelo will get might have to move somebody else is what I mean there. Is that something you might be waiting on?
Safe to say you either better have the cap space or have the ability to create it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. We'll go next to Fluto Shinzawa. Go ahead, Fluto.
Don, on the left side now, Where do you see it with Torey out of the picture? Is Dano still unsigned? How would you like to proceed?
Well, Fluto, we're continuing to explore external options. We feel that we have some young players, not unlike a few years ago where Carlo, came onto the scene. Did we absolutely know that Brandon was going to be able to go in and play the amount of minutes right out of the gate? Nope. But we felt comfortable that we were going to give him that opportunity and felt we could insulate it. I mean, Charlie and Brandon now have been in this league and had a tremendous amount of success. Can they carry a younger player? Is Grizz ready for an elevated role? Some of that's to be determined. Vakanon and Zaboro, John Moore, and the collection of the group is what it is at this stage, while I continue to explore external options. And then you might be by committee in some of those situations. And I think some of the younger players are excited. And Zdeno's part of that equation. Continue to have the conversations with his group and allow him the latitude to make some decisions accordingly.
Thanks, Ludo. We'll go next to Mike Loftus. Go ahead, Mike.
Don, with respect to Torey, did you speak to him at all in the week? I mean, he was saying last night that there was an offer and that it had been pulled.
Well, Mike, I mean, I'll address Torey. Obviously, I'm not talking about other players that are on other teams.
Sure.
In this sense, I'll leave it in the context of player and how we do communicate effectively. I think that we take a lot of pride in maintaining that communication. I mean, not agreeing, from a contractual standpoint is never disrespecting a player. It's just, you just don't find the common ground. The bottom line is we fell short on term. But from a competitive standpoint and what offers were made, we're very comfortable in the position we were in and what we tried to accomplish. And in full respect to Torey, as I've said previously, or any player heading to the market and testing the market and finding the value they seem comfortable with, that's their entitlement. They've reached that point and they're able to do that. And the club has to, during that period of time, has to have plans accordingly, whether or not it's with that current player or moving forward with a different player.
Okay, thanks for answering that. And also, he was such a key part of the power play. So as do you feel like there's someone around now that can, fill that role, or is that something that, is on your radar to, maybe obtain a defenseman that can, play up there at the top of the power play?
Well, you'd always want somebody ready-made, and replacing the component of that player is within a couple ways. As I said, Krejci moved on to that unit, so you have 4 players that are returning, and you have to institute a new player, whether that, again, from internal group that we currently have, or while I continue to look outside, that a player that might have that identity and acumen as a player, that remains to be seen. I don't have it on our roster right now. We have some flexibility to continue to explore it, but I can't tell you that I'm going to guarantee I'm going to do that. But in the same token, we feel comfortable that somebody's going to get a hell of an opportunity to go in for, having yeoman minutes and playing with 4 elite players in the National Hockey League that have had a heck of a lot of success in the power play.
Great. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. We'll go next to Kevin Dupont. Go ahead, Kevin.
Don, can you give us an idea if, given the pandemic and all the implications and ramifications here, are you getting any more guidance than usual from Buffalo in regard to spending and budget? Because the Garden had layoffs, you had layoffs. Their model is the concessions business around the world, which has been crushed. So has there been an implication there from Buffalo that you've got to be tighter than usual? You've got to be closer to the bone?
The decisions from a hockey ops standpoint, obviously Cam is in constant communication. Charlie, we are all in constant communication as to how we're going to operate. There's so much unknown for what's ahead of us in the short term here and also the long term. We understand there's going to be a flat cap scenario. It's not just one and done here. Like, it's going to take a while for us to build this thing back up. From a hockey ops standpoint, Mr. Jacobs is consistent that we've been put in place to make really effective decisions and put the best team we could possibly put on the ice. And he's consistent with that. And I also guarantee he'll be consistent in the fact that if we don't put the quality of product on the ice, then he'll find people that will. And that's the part of the job. And I respect the hell out of that, to tell you the honest truth. But as far as the greater economic standpoint, I think only Cam, Charlie, Mr. Jacobs should really answer the question in terms of the global part of Delaware North and the Boston Bruins.
typically you like to go into the year with, I'll pick a percentage here, 5%, 6% wiggle room with the cap. So that would be $3-4 million. You think you'd like to do that again this year?
We've run it lean in some years, and obviously sometimes you have players on performance bonus you have to account for. In other years, we've had a little more flexibility in space, which allows you to, at the deadline, like we have, add players. And I think everybody would like to have flexibility. I think in this environment, running it lean, you're going to have a compressed schedule. When we get back up and running, you're going to have injuries. It's hard to account for it. We went injury deep right out of the gate, and we ran some overages as a result of it. And sometimes that's unavoidable. You had probably 17 teams at some point in time cross the LTI threshold last year. So that being said, the flat cap's not going to help. And you're seeing that. You're seeing players move around for good players in the National Hockey League that aren't garnering the same type of value from an acquisition standpoint. To your point or your question in regards to flexibility, of course, I think everybody would like to have it. But at other times when you have to make the right deal and put a player in, you lose some of that flexibility, and that's always a trade-off.
I'll throw one on the heap here at the end because you brought up compressed schedule. In your gut, do you think it's going to be 82 games coming up, or do you think that it's going to be trimmed back?
Yeah, that's totally into Commissioner Bettman and Bill Daley's hands, and as to what we're going to be able to do. He's already talked about moving it from December to January. Again, I think there's a lot of governing bodies that are going to have to weigh in here, and clearly the pandemic is going to be a huge factor in determining how many games we play. We're always hopeful that we can play a full schedule, and award the Stanley Cup. They did a phenomenal job of creating an environment safe for all the players, and they awarded the Stanley Cup, and we only hope that we can play a full schedule. Again, total speculation on my part. I think the compression will make it difficult, but that's just speculation on my part, and I don't want to comment further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for a couple more. We'll go next to Jimmy Murphy and then Stephen Wino. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Hey, Don, how are you?
Jimmy, how are you?
Good. Tired, but good. I imagine not as tired as you, but just, looking around the Atlantic Division, a lot of teams right now getting better, but even more specifically, tougher, bigger, grittier. That's something you said you had focused on heading into this off season. Are you surprised that that's sort of the trend right now around the division, or is it something you expected?
I mean, I think teams, at times end up mirroring or copying. I don't think anybody will turn down high-level skill, regardless. I think the competitive nature of the skill has become very, very apparent. If you're a smaller player but you're competitive, teams want you. When you're a bigger player, you can occupy space, and you're competitive. That's even better. But the laws of physics are going to apply in that regard. I think that to get through the playoffs, which is what we want to be, a team that gets in and gets through. That's the ultimate goal. You have to have the ability to survive the war of attrition. And years that we've had success in that regard, sometimes it's being fortuitous that you don't get the catastrophic injuries, and other times it's just what happens in the course of the game. But I do believe you have to have that fortitude and that strength and the ability to tap into, from a size and strength standpoint. But it's awfully hard to take the will out of really competitive players, and Brad Marchand has that in spades. So I think you can win a Stanley Cup if you had 21 to 23 Brads on your team, but those are hard to come by.
We'll go next to Stephen Wino, and then we'll wrap it up with Matt Porter. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, Don, thanks for doing this. I'm curious, you're on the second day of free agency, and you've got guys like Taylor Hall and Tyler Toffoli and Mike Hoffman and these guys still available. I don't know if exciting is the right word, but what is this like as a GM that you kind of have still all these kind of options available to potentially add to your team this late in free agency?
Well, I think it's to be expected in this time. I think teams have been in a position where they've tried to open up space and potentially get into these conversations. And I think the players themselves are having the opportunity to explore which team might put them in the best standing, whether that's to win right away, or whether that's to re-platform themselves, or whether that's to take the best deal they can possibly have. And some of those players you mentioned are very unique and high-level players, and they're probably searching for the right opportunity for them. And when it comes, they'll find their landing spot. And I think all the other teams are doing the exact same thing. And I think we'll continue to have those conversations, explore the players, as you mentioned, are highly successful players and can impact your lineup.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll take our final question from Matt Porter. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Don, with respect to Zdeno, do you feel like you're in a good spot with him as far as an understanding on role, fit, even dollars at this point? Is there kind of a, there's no rush, obviously, and you have other business, but is there an understanding there between the two sides?
Well, there's communication between the two sides. And, again, I've had right to the level of communication with Zdeno and with his representative, Matt Cater, to make sure there is no ambiguity in terms of that. And what Z decides to do, ultimately he'll tell us, and we'll react accordingly to that. And we have our own feelings as to where these things will go. We've certainly relayed them. We're going to continue to relay them. As I mentioned before, he's an iconic player and a personality and a leader and things that we want to make sure we're dealing with this with the utmost respect, as we try to treat all our players with, and communicate as effectively as possible. And as I said, we take a lot of pride in that, and making sure that there's really no really unanswered questions in that regard, or ambiguity. And I would say that Kevin Miller falls into the same category, to making sure that we understood where Kevin's health was, where he felt he was going to be coming back to our lineup. We're excited that he's healthy, that he's so motivated and looking to finish a job that, he was watching from the sidelines. And all of our players, hopefully feel the exact same way, that there's, ambiguity is not part of the equation.